Right, hello, welcome back to our YouTube live. So what we'll do is we'll get started. So if you can hear me, just let me know, and then we will crack on with question three. So we'll run for around half an hour, where we'll be looking at language analysis for language paper two. So if you can hear me, just let me know, so then we can crack on. So what I'll do is I will get started, and to those who join later, then obviously they can sort of ask questions there and then as well. So, welcome to my YouTube live, and yes, welcome back, Aisha. So we will get started because of time, and the others can join later on, or they can play back the YouTube live. So yeah, so good evening, welcome back. So we are looking at question three today for language paper two. So this again will be sat next Monday, and what you need to remember is obviously here is 12 marks. Okay, so it is 12 marks, and it's the same concept that you were looking at for language paper one, but this time is 12 marks. So you need to analyze how language is used for effect. So what this means is you need to look at the impact of language and how does it impact the reader. So you need to identify the word class, so the use of adjectives, the use of verbs, adverbs, nouns, etc. Secondly, you need to look at the use of language techniques. So that includes such things like simile, metaphor, personification, alliteration, pathetic fallacy, etc. But also sentence forms. So these include a short, simple sentence, a long, complex sentence, compound sentences, etc. So let's have a look at it in further detail. So paper two, question three. This question will test the language part of AO2. The examiner is expecting you to be able to, so number one, explain how writers use language to achieve their purpose and influence readers. And secondly, use technical terms to support your analysis of language. So we'll have a look at a typical sort of exam question, and then you can pick out what you need to do. So what I recommend is when you look at the question, break down the question into different segments or different parts. So question three reads, you now only need to refer to source A from lines 13 to 23. Now, it could be source A, it could be source B, it could be either. So it's specific lines. So the quotes you pick out must be from those specific lines. How does the writer use language to describe the storm? And it's worth 12 marks. So there are certain keywords that you want to make a note of and use this to sort of prepare for the question. So the how, there's always going to be the word how. So what this means in simple terms is how has the writer used language to affect the reader? Okay, there's a reason, there's a purpose behind why the writer has used particular language techniques. They don't just use it spontaneously; they use it with intention. Make sure you read the question carefully. In this example, you're only supposed to write about source A. So again, it could be source A, it could be source B. The sample question is about how the writer uses language to appeal to the reader. And make sure you use a range of technical terms to describe the writer's technique. So what this means is make sure next week, when you are supporting your points with the relevant quote, make sure you identify the correct term and terminology. So if the writer has used an adjective, make sure you identify the specific word which is an adjective. Or if the writer has used a verb, make sure you identify which word they've used as a verb. So these are things that you need to refer to in your answer. So very quickly, so in simple terms, this question is really asking you to comment on things like the effect of words and phrases, language features and techniques, and the effect of different sentence forms. Okay, so that's something for you to consider and look at. Now, some top tips for you to sort of remember for next Monday include the following. So put a highlighted box around the lines you are being asked to analyze. I know it sounds so simple, but what happens is sometimes students end up using quotes from different parts of the text because there's a lot of paragraphs and two sources, so they do get confused. Remember, words and phrases, language features and techniques, and sentence forms. These are the things you're picking out and looking out for. Highlight the focus of the question, for example, to describe the storm. So remember, all the quotes you choose have to show something to do with the storm, how the storm is being described. What you'll see often is that students are picking out quotes which are irrelevant, and therefore they struggle to analyze it in further detail. And remember, three is the magic number. Find three words or phrases that most grab your attention in relation to the question. What effects do these words or phrases have? And can you identify any techniques the writer has used? So you are not allowed to say these sort of following terms because they are generic and it's essentially not really effective. So the first one makes the reader want to read on. How many times have we seen that? Puts an image in the reader's mind of what? Tell us. Okay, be specific. Because so many times students say, "Oh, it creates a image in the reader's mind," but they don't tell us what it is. Makes it interesting, engaging. Of course it does, but how? Tell us how does it make it interesting and engaging, and makes it flow. Again, ask yourself how and why. So let me know in the comment section if you've ever done this before. I'm sure it's something that happens naturally. But have you said something like this before in your language exams? Have you ever used this before? You have, okay. Yeah, I mean, it happens quite often, to be fair. But remember, you can say that, but as long as you tell us how and why, then you should be scoring the top marks, okay? So always tell us how and why. But the problem is the students mention it, but they don't tell us the how and the why. So whenever you look at the quotes next Monday, ask yourself how and why the writer has done this, okay? Right, so moving on. A top tip again, once again, you should remember is say a lot about a little. So what this means is obviously zoom in and talk a lot about the particular word that the writer has used. Okay, so that's absolutely crucial for you to consider. So don't select things you can explore. That's the danger of feature spotting rather than picking things that grab your attention. And fully explore the effect of language used by the writer. What does it make the reader think, feel, or imagine? And essentially, you're looking to write around three petal or peel paragraphs, and spend no more than 10 minutes answering the question, and then move on. Yeah, I mean, I would slightly tweak that here. I would say probably 12 to 15 minutes. It is 12 marks, so a minute a mark, but you can spend up to, I would say, 15 minutes on this question. I think 10 minutes is really short, but I think 15 minutes would be ideal for this question. Okay, so that is literally what you need to do in terms of approaching question three language analysis. And to score the top marks, students, what I would recommend is for you to focus on the effect. How is it effective? Okay, how has the writer used language for effect? So that's something that you need to remember to score top marks. So let's have a look at a sort of a sample answer and sort of give you some top tips as well in terms of how to prepare for this question. So if I just scroll down, you're going to look at how in depth the analysis is, and you're going to see this is why this was able to score the level four. A level four answer is an answer which is of the highest band, it's perceptive, and it's detailed. Okay, so you got to see this in this example as well. So let's begin. So it says the writer uses a long complex sentence to suggest that the storm is racing through the camp and is never ending. Okay, so that's the point. Evidence: there are lots of violent verbs, so identifying the word class, such as whipped and plunging, which all convey the power of the storm and the way it is seen as a brutal force of nature. So that's the explanation. The writer personifies the storm. Again, you're further analyzing in detail. The writer personifies the storm, conveying it is as a person who intends on destroying the camp in a blinding fury of driving snow. This suggests that the storm has embarked on a deliberate and savage attack. So remember, perceptive analysis. Look, you read between the lines and zoom in further detail. It's as if the storm is this vicious predator. How many times have we seen within the insert this predator prey relationship, especially with the weather? The writer also says the storm took the mountain in its grip, which again shows the power and force of the storm. Verbs such as these emphasize that the storm is fully in control of the mountain. So remember, that's exploring the effect, okay? It is also evident that the climbers are at risk of losing their lives. This makes the reader feel terribly uneasy and tense. and we fear concerned for the safety of the mountaineers. This type of storm and the way that the writer has brought it to life serves as a stark reminder that nature can be so beautiful and at the same time so threatening. Okay, so look at that paragraph, an amazing, amazing paragraph, very detailed, and definitely an example of a level 4 response. Okay, so I hope that sort of gives you some inspiration of how to write in depth and perceptive language analysis for question 3. And this is something that you want to follow next week. You see, you have to correctly identify the language terms, use relevant subject terminology, pick up particular words, zoom into them, and go into further detail later down in your paragraphs. Okay, so these paragraphs, as it's 12 marks, they are expected to be slightly more extended and further detailed and developed. Okay, so I hope that sort of gives you a better understanding. What did you all think of this paragraph? Let me know in the comment section below. What do you all do? Would you all agree it's a level 4 answer? So the highest band, is it worth a level 4 response? So yeah. So any thoughts, any comments? What did you all think? Okay, I agree. It's very detailed. Yes, absolutely, Aisha. So it is very detailed, and this is how you would sort of approach your question 3 language. So again, literally, it's nothing different. It's nothing alien to you all. You did this literally on Monday, okay, with the life of pi. So it's important that you look at these examples and use this as inspiration. Okay, so clearly you need to identify the language used by the writer, identify a relevant quote to support that point, explain it, look at the effect. As you can see, we've explored the effect here. And then, most importantly, develop your analysis in further detail. So, what I mean by this is you see next Monday, within your quote, you'll find a certain word that you want to look at in further detail. So you want to zoom into it, okay? So you want to look at the connotations of that word as well and what it shows about the weather, for example, or the storm. So these are the comments that you need to provide to allow the examiner to score you the highest band for question number 3. So that is literally question 3 covered for you. And I think that is some top tips and just some do's and don'ts in terms of language effects on readers. So the green are things you should do, and obviously the red are the things you don't do. So do follow the following. So read the question carefully and underline the keywords. Okay, so simple, but a lot of students forget to do this. Only refer to the section name in the question. Make clear points to answer the question and choose quotations as evidence. And you can use literally snippets, okay? So short, concise quotations to support your point. When you identify language devices, make sure you identify them correctly. Spotlight keywords, okay? So you want to look at these keywords, zoom into them, and look at the connotations of those. Explain the effects on the reader. So, what kind of effect does it create on the reader? Don't just say, oh, it makes them continue to read on, whatever, because that's not really in depth detail. Okay. So, for question 3, paper 2, this is this form, all right. The writer uses language that is shown the extra, then explain the quote, then analyze words. Yeah. Yeah. Once you analyze the words, make sure you tell us the effect. Okay. That's where most of your marks lie. Okay. So, CR7 fan, you need to focus on the effect as well. So I would say that is the significant part for language analysis. Okay, so I hope that answers your question. And the don'ts as well. Don't forget to use words from the question in your response. Don't analyze quotations outside the specified lines. I know it sounds so simple, but a lot of students they decide to pick out quotes which are outside of that relevant section. And don't mention the writer's feelings. It's not about the writer here. It's about the reader. So these are some top tips for you to remember and also follow for your exam next Monday. So that's that. In terms of, so again, this one's quite important. If I just zoom in very quickly, yeah. So here we go. So band 4 responses. So what do you need to show for band 4 or level 4? So you need to literally make sure you explore some of these in further detail. So, overall, the writer has dot 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 link back to the question and explain the overall effect on the reader. what are the writer's intentions? So what does the writer intend to do? So that's something for you to explore in further detail. So what do you mean talk about the effect? Yeah, so what is the effect of language? So what does it show about the storm? Okay, what impression does it create regarding the storm? So what impact does it have? So that's what we mean by the effect of the language. Okay, by using this language technique, what is the consequence? Okay, what does it lead to? What does it trigger? So these are things that you want to sort of consider and explore for your question three. If the analysis is about two people in the extract, do we need to compare them? Um, what do you mean? And it will be on one. It's not going to be on two. As in, are you talking about question four? If you're talking about question four, so if you're comparing perspectives, then yeah. But if you're talking about question three, it will be on one source. Okay. So do we need to compare them as a whole or separated? Oh, okay. So I don't really understand that question. If I'm assuming you're saying if there's two people mentioned within the insert, right, within that paragraph, do you need to explore both of them? That Quinta, that depends on what they ask. Okay, if they ask how does the writer use language to describe X or Y, so X or Y being the character, then you need to explore whichever character is mentioned. If they mention both, then you mention both. Okay, so Quinta, that is dependent on what they ask for question three. Have a look at question three and see what they say. So, do they say a specific character or do they refer to both? But with that, yeah, if they look at Simon and Maris, then yeah. So, if it's within one question three, then yeah, you should explore both. Yeah, yeah. I think I do as well. Okay, so that's something that I may have to double check. Joe and his brother. Okay, cool. So yeah, so that's that. Now, very quickly, if I just go to my YouTube channel here, if I just go on full screen, right? So just to go over the mark scheme and just to show you some top tips and share it with you, what is the examiner looking for? These are the things you may want to write this down on a flashcard. Shows detailed and perceptive understanding of language. So, what do we mean by perceptive in simple terms? Perceptive means you look at the explicit and also the implicit. So, you look at the obvious things and the not so obvious things. So, being perceptive is you think outside the box. Think outside the box and look at why has the writer used these particular words. There's a reason why they use it. Okay. Secondly, analyzes the effects of the writer's choices of language. So remember, the effects of the language is very important for this question. Selects a judicious range of quotations. So what this means is you have to be very selective and precise. Don't just pick out any random quotes. Pick out quotes which are suitable and best suited to answer the question. Use a range of subject terminology appropriately. So make sure you identify the relevant subject terminology. So, for example, if the writer uses an adverb, make sure you identify which word is the adverb. If the writer uses personification, make sure you show evidence of that, of how the writer has used personification and the effect of using personification. Okay. Perceptive comments are made about why these techniques are used and the effect that they have on the reader. So don't just tell us in the exam next week, oh, it makes the reader feel sympathetic. Okay. How many times have you all written this? Let me know in the comments. How many times have you written something like, oh, it makes the reader feel sympathetic or feel sorry for them? Has anyone written that before? Because that's for some reason a very common answer I see in a lot of my students' responses. Okay, see, there's another paper that talks about two different boats. Yeah, I think if you're talking about, I think it's some surfing text, isn't it? Right, where they in source A, it's surfing in Hawaii, I believe, and in source B, I think it's in California, something like that. Right, I think that's the one you're talking about. But again, I might be sort of confused there. But anyways, all the time feels sad. Yeah, exactly. So Quinta. So if you are stating that, you need to tell us how. How is it showing them feeling sad and why? Okay. So why? What does it show and why? Okay. These are the things you want to sort of explore and explain in further detail. So for language, I always break it down into these three areas. So number one is words and phrases. So you could be looking at the adjectives, the nouns, the verbs, and the adverbs. Number two, language techniques. It includes things like a simile, metaphor, emotive language. Okay, you'll always find them in your insert, even on Monday. So even on language paper one, so for Life of Pi, um, if you look at it, it literally was packed with word classes, words and phrases. It was packed with language techniques as well. And to be honest, the insert itself, you had many examples of sentence forms. You had short, simple sentences. You had long, complex sentences. So, these things are there for a reason. The exam board want you to analyze them. They make it easy for you to find. Okay. So remember, on Monday's exam, it was literally in front of you. So similarly on Monday for language paper 2, same concept, you're going to find a lot of these within the insert. So your job is obviously to analyze how they're used for effect. So that is literally what you can do. So how I would approach this question for question 3 is possibly the following. Again, perhaps one paragraph on words and phrases, one paragraph on language techniques, and one paragraph on sentence forms. Or alternatively, you may want to do the following. You could do, let's say, two paragraphs on words and phrases, one paragraph on language techniques. So that can also get you full marks. So don't stress over the sentence forms, but often it is there. So, for example, a declarative sentence, a short, simple sentence, you'll often find this within your insert. So, again, 3 to 4 paragraphs. I would say 3 paragraphs is more than fine as long as you provide detailed and perceptive analysis. So I hope that sort of gives you a better understanding. If you have a better understanding of this question, do leave a thumbs up so far. Are you finding this beneficial? Are you finding this informative? Please let me know in the chats. If you have any questions so far, I'm happy to take a few questions before we move on. Is this English? Yes, it is English language. So we are preparing for the exam on Monday. Also, yes, very informative, excellent, very beneficial. Thank you. Awesome. Thank you very much. Um, Yep, awesome. So again, for sentence forms, students, on Monday, you're going to find examples of this. I can guarantee on Mondays, on Monday you had language paper one, Life of Pi, right? So the insert was packed with language features. Now, they give you like inserts like this for a reason, so it becomes easy for you to pick out. And I guarantee on Monday, you'll have two sources, but trust me, in source A and source B, you're going to find examples of these simple sentence, a complex sentence, a compound sentence, imperative sentence, interrogative, and a declarative sentence. Who knows what an imperative sentence is? If you know what an imperative sentence is, do let me know in the comment section below. What is an imperative sentence? Imperative. To give order. Yes, that's correct. Okay, so an imperative sentence is again giving a command or an order, and you instruct someone to do something. So again, how is that effective? You could show certain things about a character. So if we see the writer using an imperative, it can show you the authoritative nature of a person, or it could show you the frustration, the exasperation of a character. So don't forget, don't just identify it, but tell us the impact of it, the effect of it. So why has the writer used an imperative here? What kind of impression does it create of the character? Okay, does that make sense? Don't just look at it for the sake of it. Don't identify it on Monday, but tell us how. Okay, help go, to give order, help go. Yeah, exactly. Well done, Quinta. Yep, Aisha. Yeah, CR7 fan. Yep, that's correct. Yeah, well done. So that's fine. So literally for Monday, you're looking at around 3 paragraphs. Now, don't stress if it's not in this order. Again, you can go in whatever order you want. If you looked at our model answer earlier on, so literally 10 minutes ago, we started off with sentence forms. Okay, so there's no particular order that you need to go in, but as long as you cover some areas of language. Okay. Um, Do we need to explain the effect with the devices or structure? Is that what you mean? Yeah. So when you look at the effect, yeah, so you can look at the effect of the device, but obviously, specifically, you're looking at the words within that device, if that makes sense. Okay. So you look at the words within the device and you zoom into and tell us why the writer has used that. Okay. There's a reason behind it. So, for example, I'll give you a simple example. Why, like, when you're reading the Insta on Monday, instead of using the word loud, the writer may decide to intentionally use the word deafening. So, what's the effect of using deafening compared to loud? Who can tell me? Can you leave a comment in the chat? So for question three, we spend 15 minutes in it, right? Yeah, so around, yeah, I would say 15 minutes or so is an ideal amount. Noisy. Okay, so if you look at the words that the writer uses, for example, instead of loud, they use the word deafening. It shows you the severity of the weather. Okay, so for example, the insert we were looking at today, it was about a storm. So if they use the word loud, if they use the word deafening in comparison to loud, it shows you the severity and it shows you how harsh and hostile the conditions were. So these are the things you want to comment on. The writer is using these words to show you the severity and how harsh and hostile the situation really was. Severity or danger. Yes, that's correct, Quinta. Yeah, these are exactly the comments you're looking for on Monday, okay? So for question, yeah, I've answered that question already. That's fine. And that, okay, so yeah, so some final sort of top tips for this question. Aim for 3 to 4 detailed paragraphs. Focus on the effect. Remember, I always say this to my students, focus on the effect. That's where you score the top marks. If you look at the examiner's report, it always states how you can, score the top marks by simply looking at the effect. At home, I have great ideas, but on the paper, I'm blank. Okay, I think you know what it is. I think it just comes down to practice. Maybe you want to time yourself at home. Are you timing yourself at home? I would say to time yourself, because that sort of gives you that exam pressure. So that's that. Focus on the effect, spend up to 15 minutes on this question, and avoid making vague statements. Ask yourself how and why. I always tell my students, ask yourself how and why. How and why. That's very important. So that's super significant and super important for you to remember. So that is that for your question three. And I think that sort of wraps up question three. So for the last 5 minutes, I'll take any questions. If there's any questions you'd like to ask, feel free to fire away. Okay. So for question five, when we do dear, write your address and name. Do you get marks for that? Okay. So if you just need to follow the correct format. You can start off with dear and then you write the address, etc. But if you miss it out, it's not the end of the world, CR7 fan. So if you miss it out, it's not significant, meaning you're not going to lose a large chunk of marks. But you should follow the correct format of a letter. As long as you start off with dear and then you just need to show the examiner you know how to structure the letter. Okay. So if you skip the address, it's not a big deal. You can make it up, okay? It'll literally take you 2 minutes. Just make up the address. If you're not sure how to write a letter, you can check out my. It can be, yeah. Just make yeah. It can be fake. You can just use your school address. So that's that. If you're unsure on how to write a letter, I have done a video on it, CR7 fan. So do check it out. It's on the playlist. So I hope that answers your question. So you do need to prepare for writing a letter, writing an article, writing a speech as well. So yeah, so do prepare for that. I know you've got other exams, but make sure you prepare. I was watching the video, it was useful. I have questions as well. Excellent. Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate the support, Quinta. No problem. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. So is the question five going to be 100% be a letter? Okay, if I was going to predict, okay, last year we had an article. Um, and yeah, it's most probably an article, I'll be honest, but again, don't be surprised if it's a letter, okay? Although, yeah, the article does come up most of the time. We haven't seen a speech quite often, okay? She's always an article in most papers. Yeah, most of the time that is correct. It is most of the time an article. Yeah, Quinta, that is correct. I have that question. Yeah, that's fine. Anyone else? Feel free to ask questions. I'm happy to take questions for the last few minutes. For an article, do we do the same layer? Okay, for an article, you need a title, and then after the title, you need a strap line. So a strap line is literally 2 to 3 sentences that will summarize what the rest of your article is about, and then you'll have subheadings, and then obviously your paragraphs. Okay, so simple terms: a title followed by a strap line, then a subheading before you write your paragraphs. Yeah, so yeah, exactly. So yeah, again, with the introduction, your first sort of paragraph, same thing. But again, as long as they're more focused, they're more concerned about the writing itself. So don't stress about, oh, this. I need to have this. I need to have that. But they're more focused on the content itself. So if I forget the title, did they remove many marks? No, it's not significant. So it's not a big deal. No, that's fine. It's not the end of the world, Quinta. It's not significant. So if you left out, don't worry, it's not going to have a large sort of yeah, exactly. As long as the answer itself was good, then you're good to go. Okay. Cool. So we'll run for another minute or two before I end this live, because I do have some other classes. So what do you mean title in the article? Yeah. So for example, if it's to write an article about, let's say, write an article explaining or arguing why you think school homework or school uniform should be banned. So you need to think of a title to answer that question. Okay. So I hope that sort of answers your question. Okay, cool. So yeah, so what we'll do is we'll wrap up here for today. Thank you very much to you all for attending today's live. The answer is wrong. What do you mean? Could I be a recent investigate? Could I be a recent investigation made by? So, what do you mean by that? Could I be? As in, if you are using like facts and sort of, if you're using stats or statistics, you can make it up. Okay, you can make it up. So as long as it sounds believable, it sounds convincing, then that's something that you can use. Could it be the title a recent investigation by regarding the topic? Yeah, as long as it's answering the question, then you can use that. Okay. So what I would say to do is to use again a title which is answering the question. Perhaps you want to use alliteration. You might want to use a pun as well. Okay. So that's that. So what we'll do is we'll end it here for today. All the best with your revision for English language paper 2. Thank you very much, and I shall see you all very soon. Bye bye.